Hello, everyone. Welcome to our open class today. And I'm June. And happy Saturday. Okay, so it's a good time to see you guys all. And today we're going to talk about ACT and how to get a perfect score on ACT. Okay, and today I also glad to invite the teacher Louis and also my coworker for my whole lifetime. I feel like. Okay, hi Louis. Say hi. Okay, yeah, you can talk now. Okay.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Louis. Hi, June.
Okay. All right. So I think there's like a lot of old friends because every time we have a lot of old friends, bring their kids, bring their family to watch our open class. And we appreciate your support all the time. Your support is very important for us. Okay. So right now we want to talk about the ACT score, and actually the maximum score on the ACT is 36. We know that, right? So the perfect score means 36. So one of the facts that I want to tell and share with everybody is like out of the 1.9 million students who take the test every year, only about 3,700 students get the highest ACT score. Okay, so if you get like 36 or a perfect score, that means you are 3,700 students, one of them, okay, out of 1.9 million students. So definitely the perfect score can place you at the top of the millions of high school students, and it can be a big boost to your college application. All right, so because SAT changed a lot these days, and also, yeah, they delayed the test day and they put it off. So that's why ACT can be a better choice. Maybe we're gonna talk about a little bit more today, and prepare your question, and we're gonna have a Q&A section later, okay? All right, so if you are new to 7EDU Open Class, I'm going to introduce myself. This is me. I think I look better in picture than in camera, okay? All right, okay, I'm the founder of 7EDU, and I'm really passionate about helping students achieve their best result, both in academic and college application. And I'm gonna spend more time introduce you, Louis, okay? So Louis is a former New Oriental teacher, and actually it's like 新东方名师, all right? So Louis has a very rich background, okay? So used to study in France and spent a 10 years there, and then went back to China, right? And then came to United States. You're gonna spend a lot of time, with the students, no matter in China, in United States. Okay, so she has been teaching students, both international and local students, for a while. And during this process, we do have a lot of discussion and brainstorming, and realize that how to help the students, in different location, and how to help native speaker to improve, how to help like unnative speaker to improve. And her class is like same like me and very interesting. I think it's like more interesting than mine. Okay, all right. So we're going to talk about the test day, and also the test day under the COVID-19. We just know, like, the SAT, they just canceled the June test, and I think the August test is not sure, and September maybe, October maybe. The most important things, like I know everybody got scared out, right? Because Google and Twitter, they all announced like they're gonna let everybody work from home forever, right? Just kidding. It's just maybe for the rest of this year. But some of company, they just even say they want to consider work from home forever. That's a huge change, especially for the test, because they don't want to get the test center crowded. That's why they want everybody to keep the social distance. So we really doubt about if the August test gonna, become true, right? But see, the college board, they announced like they probably want to consider like the AP. They want to move to online for SAT or ACT, okay? So for ACT, if you look at the test date, and so far they only changed the April test to June, which means like they still have more test date than SAT. So if you look at the checkbox in the red, and you can see like you have more options than the SAT. Okay, so if you really want to, rush, because I know some of the students already like 11th grade, and you're getting there to your application, so probably want to try both SAT and ACT at the same time. All right. Before we started, actually, I want to ask Louis a question. Okay, so actually we debated with this a lot, right? So you think SAT is easier or ACT is easier?
It depends, but for me, I think SAT is easier.
Okay.
ACT more difficult. Yeah.
Okay, so for me, I feel like ACT is easier and SAT is harder. All
Why?
right. Okay. I feel like, the ACT is easier for the question wise, right? So, the question they posted usually is like really shallow. It's not like that deep. It's not complicated to get your thinking, process. So it just get the answer like this, but require like very short time. Okay, so I think like most students feel like ACT is like easier because when they do ACT test, they feel like good.
Yeah, that's my opinion, different from that of the students, because most students, when they take both tests, they will feel that ACT is easier. But if you look at the results, it's not so easy to get a very high level or 36.
Yes. Okay, I agree with you. So actually, both me and Louis, we're on the same page, but from different perspective. So SAT actually is harder content-wise, right? But
Yeah.
it's easier to get 1,500 above. But for ACT, it's really easy. Everybody think like it's not hard at all. But if you want to get like a good score, when I say good score, it's like, we mean like 35, 36, right? It's harder because, it's just like really short time, you have to react very fast, right? Okay, so
Mhm.
you look at this chart. So we both posted SAT and ACT, the time and the questions. And if you look at the blue and white, it looked like Democrat and the public, the color. Sorry, I didn't mean to match the color. Okay, so the SAT 52 questions, ACT 40 questions. Okay, and for English section, SAT 44, ACT 75 questions. Okay, yes, you have a little bit more time, but you have more questions as well. And we know every question provides you 5 answer choices, which means you have more questions than you thought. All right. So for the math section, same. Less time, more question. So basically, that's how it look. Generally, you have like a brief understanding for SAT, ACT. If you like really a fast person and then you are very good at like reacting fast, probably you want to go for ACT. And if you feel like, oh, I need time to think, you are kind of like a thinker, you want to go for SAT. And this kind of debate is kind of like ongoing all the time because every time they ask me about SAT, ACT, and most of students, they switch from SAT to ACT and the ACT to SAT. It happens a lot, right? Okay, so we are going to talk specifically about how you can crack your ACT and get a perfect score. So start from me, okay? So first we want to talk a little bit about like how ACT scored. I just cut a little bit starting from the 32 because I believe most students get 32 not really hard, right? So like they can get 32 pretty much like easily, do a couple of tests and then take some like real test and then they just get there, right? However, from 32 to 36, you think it's only 4 in score, but it's a long way to go, okay? So actually in English, you can't miss 0 questions. That means like the full raw score of 75. If you miss 1 question, you always got a 35. You can't get like a 36. And in math section, you can miss 0 question or 1 question, right? So math, I want to pass to Louis. So what about the math section?
Yeah, for math, you can like miss 1 question and still get 36.
Okay.
But for science, you will feel more pressured because there's no error space for you because you have to get 40 questions right to get a full score.
Okay, and in reading, you can miss 0. So basically, ACT has 0 tolerance for mistake for the English section, but a little bit like better tolerant for the math and science section. Looks like this, right? Okay,
That's
so
why I think ACT is harder because for SAT, I think for each section you have based on different curve, but for each section you can like miss 1 question and still get a full score.
okay, yeah. So essentially, you need to aim for a perfect score, right? So you have to really want a perfect score, then you can get a perfect score. So it's just really different from SAT. You give yourself a little bit space. You feel like, oh, I can miss 1 or 2 or 3. But for the ACT, if you want to get good score, which means 35 above, there's not too much room for you to make any mistakes, okay? All right, so let's look at this. This is the screen cut from the college. like the college ranking plus some colleges like the ACT score. People love to do that, you know. So there's a really, really ironic stuff, ironic thing. Because on one hand, they always say like, you know, we don't need SAT score anymore. Especially this year because COVID-19 and some colleges, they just make an announcement telling people, hey, we don't need, we're not asking for any test prep score, like a standardized score. For example, SAT, ACT, not even AP, not even subject, okay? But my question is like, dare you not to take it because you just grab the paper saying, hey, because you guys say you don't need it, or you're not asking for it, so I'm not going to provide it. So are you going to do that, or are you dare you to do that? This is my question. So think carefully about the policy, okay? And read behind the words. So the policy definitely not for the top like colleges. And also when they say they're not asking for the, you know, the score, doesn't mean like they are going to choose those people without the score, right? They're still going to choose, you know, like the most competitive students, right? They are going to, you know, compete. They're going to compare, right? So how can you make yourself, you know, outstanding during this process? That's important. So we still believe you should take it seriously. The good news is like the UC, they announced that like they say, oh, we forever gonna cancel the requirement for SAT, SAT. However, you know, they're going to create some other test. Are you serious? You know, so this is gonna be like very ironic way. I think the college are also under pressure because a lot of low-income students, a lot of, you know, students, they just don't have the time to prepare or they don't want to study, and then they ask for so-called equity, right? So I think we really have to read into the policies and really think in a smart way. Yeah. So most of the top schools, they the average, the students they get the SAT is and the ACT is like pretty high. And in the previous SAT, we like an open class, we talk about SAT is you have to get at least a 1,500 above. And for ACT, look at this, you have to get a 35 above. Okay, so when you're gonna ask us what is kind of good score for ACT, I would say 36, because when I say 36, maybe you just miss a little bit, you got a 35. That's not bad. But if you want to shooting for 35, you're gonna got a 34. If you want to say 34 above, you're gonna get a 33 or 32. If you want to say 30, just never think about it. You never get on the 30, okay? All right, so aim a little bit higher, I would say, okay? So you have to really shoot for perfect score, and then you're probably gonna get there. All right, so here is some motivations before we're going to talk about how to get a full score, okay? So we present some of the full score from our students, and yeah, so 3,700 students. Yeah, remember the number. 3,700 students out of the 1.9 million, they can get a full score. So that should be you, okay? All right, so this is one of, those students who get a perfect score, they come from those teachers, okay? Hi, so I was there, Louis there, Lisa, Amy, say hi to the teachers. Okay, we're also gonna offer some summer online class this coming summer. So grab your seats and then come with us. All right, so now we're gonna talk a little bit more about how can you get a perfect ACT score. I'm so excited, okay? And actually we talked with Louis today, and Louis said, I don't have enough time to show them all my strategies. And I say, okay, just to show them some. So let them to understand a little bit more. If you can understand, you can prepare by yourself, perfect. If you need help, let us know, all right? So the first thing I wanna talk about, we wanna talk about is motivation, okay? So actually, you know, nobody think the motivation is the first priority, is the most important thing for the test prep, right? But I think this is the most important thing. So I put on the first part. So every time when you talk about a motivation, when you talk about, you know, how much you want it, and usually my students don't tell me too much about, you know, what they want or how much they want it. Most likely they would tell me something about like, you know, how much they need it, you know, how much they need it. So when you need a perfect score, it's very different from when you want a perfect score. You know why? Because when you need something, it's not like really it cannot trigger your ambition, You really have to want it. And then you're probably going to find some energy and probably going to find some like ambition inside of your heart. Okay. All right. So I don't care what is your level right now. And because the ACT used the composite scores, so you really have to aim for is 35.5 average or higher. That means you can get a 235, 236, or 134, 336. Okay. So think about it: reading, English, and science and the math. And today I'm going to cover reading and English, and Louis is going to cover science and math. So you decide based on your situation. You need 235 or 236 or 134, 336. Okay, I think the first one is easier. All right. Okay, so because you want it, and you really, really, really have to want it, okay? So this is one of the most important pieces that differentiate successful people from unsuccessful people. That's what I believe, okay? So it is really important. So it's nothing about it, you're smart or you're not smart, but you really, really want it. You want it so bad. I used to make the comparison for my students. I say, one person tell you, for example, you hold a bread and you ask them like, do you want it? You hungry? The person say, yeah. So don't give the bread to the person, right? Because that's not really hungry person. So when you hold the bread, you say, do you want, you don't even finish your sentence, right? You didn't even finish your question and the person just to grab it and put it in the mouth. That's called already want it. So you want it so bad and you will get it for sure. So the second part that you have to pay attention is quality material, okay? So I know a lot of students, they do a bunch of like online practices, but I think that's not really good idea because, like practice make perfect really depends on the situation. If you practice on the real test, for example, the official ACT test, probably you can get a really good sense of, how the test looks like. But if you do like bunch of questions here and there and buy different books, even I know a lot of famous books like Barron, like Princeton, not really helpful because some of the tests are not real tests. So only real tests can help, or mock tests create based on the real test. For example, 7EDU, like mock test. It's not advertisement, but it just really quality material, okay? And I also want remind everybody, so we give out the real test for free, okay? So if you really want to test out your kids' level and you want to do a bunch of practice, please contact our team. So we're gonna give out the real test for free, okay? All right, so another part I want to mention about the quality material is I want to mention a little bit more about our class and how we designed. I want to take the 10-day all-in-one, for example. So when we work together to create the 10-day all-in-one, basically we put all the similar questions together. For example, for the reading section, we put a similar fiction passages together. We put a similar question type together. So we want everybody to understand what is the pattern for the certain type of passages and certain type of questions. So that's for 10-day all-in-one. For the 12 days ACT mock test and review, we provide a real test, plus we provide the real test analysis and also the mock test created based on the real test, okay? So we have 12 days, we have 10 days, it really depends on your schedule. And I think for this coming summer, most students, they just really cannot do a lot of activities because COVID-19. So my suggestion is grab your time to fully prepare for your test, get it down once, okay? So I think if a student can, have the ACT take only once and then got a full score, got a perfect score, I think you get a more chance to get into the top schools, okay? All right, so a little bit more about no excuse, okay? Attitude is important, okay? I borrowed this picture from my student who sent it to me. Because the student told me like, oh, I'm not going to, find any excuses anymore, because usually whenever I have a class with him, he always say like, you know what, I just, I know the content, but I don't know how to approach this question. Then I always ask him like, how do you solve the question? Can you tell me, is there any general rule that you need to know for the future? Okay, so if you made any mistake, for example, I ask him, I say, can you just do not tell me like, oh, I was stuck between two answers, and then I just guessed I guessed wrong. You always need to fully understand your situation, why you made a mistake. So you always make one step further, question yourself, okay? So why could I not eliminate one of the last answer choices? So knowing the correct answer now, so how can I, eliminate next time, so does this suggest a strategy that I can remember for the future? So you always want to push yourself a little bit, like one step further, okay? So some student told me, like, I misread the question, that's why I got wrong. I don't get it and I don't buy it, right? So why? Because that's excuse as well. Because you have to ask yourself, why did I misread the question? If you figure out why did you misread the question, I think next time you will do better to avoid this situation, okay? So another one I want to mention a little bit more for the ACT test is like when you're doing the test, sorry, I will let you talk later, okay, Luis? Okay, sorry, be patient with me. When you take the test, you really have to control your mood, because mental status is really, really important. Because when I train the students, you remember the boy that we trained together, they say, oh no, I'm having trouble with this math question. So if I don't get this wrong, if I don't get this right, I can't get full score and then mess up the rest of them, right? So mental stable is important. I would say mental status is important. So you really have to be like a pro athlete, right? Or a performer, right? So you need to be confident about your skill, right? Even you mess up with one, and as long as you are stable, you're calm, and you can do the rest of them as well. Don't forget, you have 35, 35, 36, 36 chances, right? Or option 2, 34 for one section, but 36, 36, 36 for the other 3 sections. So think about it, and you always need to balance yourself, okay? All right, so now let's get to the point. All right, so this is SAT reading with ACT reading, and we talk about the time. So, I mean, even SAT, students always complain to us like they can't finish reading it, right? 35 minutes, too short. So now look at ACT, 35 minutes, okay, is even shorter, okay? So the passage, 5, 4, 52 question, 40 questions, okay? So the passage type is the 1 US world history, 2 history social study, 2 science. And 1 fiction, literature, sometimes it's literature, right? Sometimes it's like a fiction grabbed together from the book. So social science and humanities and natural science, okay? But for question types, you can tell like the ACT reading provide way less reading question types, way less, okay? It's just main idea, vocab in context, inference, detail oriented. So you can tell like the ACT more focused on the detail, and the SAT reading more focused on the like the big picture, okay? So if you are a big picture person, go ahead and choose SAT. If you are a detail-oriented person, go ahead for ACT, okay? So Luis, how to tell if a student is a big picture student or a detail student?
We can tell from a lot of aspects of her characters, but what we do most in 7EDU is that we just give her a test.
Okay, all right. Yes, I agree. And there's another tricky thing usually we tell is like usually I ask the students, like, think about the conversation with your parents. If your mom just says something to you saying like, can you just please clean your room and, put your books in your shelf and do your homework and do your laundry and blah, 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 blah. So what you get it from your mom's, saying, what do you get it? So that can just, can get some like self-awareness. If you all hear about like socks, laundry, books, room, bed, homework, oh my God, my mom can just kill me, right? Just like crazy. So if you think like that, probably you're a detail-oriented person. But if you think like, oh, my mom just wanted me to get my job done, so you are a big picture person, okay? So you can do a little bit like self-judge. All right, so let's try the English section. So English section, you can tell they don't really ask you a lot for your grammar, but they do have the percentage, okay? So Luis helped a lot of students on the, the grammar side, right? So the 13% of punctuation, this is the headache part, right, Luis?
Yeah.
Okay, so I would say 16% and 13%, this punctuation part and usage, and I think it's hard for a lot of native speaker. And the 16% style and 16%, like 24% sentence structure is hard for a lot of international students. Yeah.
Yes.
So this is what we realize that. And then if you want to know like more, or you want to do like self-check, please go back to your practice to figure out which part you belongs to. I mean, which part is your mistakes, right? You made more mistake in punctuation. You can ask Louis for help. You made more mistake for sentence structure, ask me for help, right? Okay, so now I want to pass to Louis to talk a little bit more about a science section and a math section. Go ahead, Louis.
Yeah, okay. So it's my part now and my strongest point in science. Because personally, I have the education in science, so I was always teaching in this field. And also this one thing that distinguish ACT from SAT, because everybody knows in SAT, we don't have the science section. So in ACT, we have a special section focused on science, but don't worry if you are not so good at physics or biology or chemistry, because it does not verify your school performance. It does not assume that you have already know everything in the science field, but it's the purpose of science section is to test the students' logical thinking, like how can we tackle a scientific situation. I have some questions, but first I want to speak about the purpose of the science section. First, you have to have the comprehensive understanding of academic context. You have to read a lot before every experiment, and then you understand the different graphics, and you understand the different process, the comparison of different experiments, which are all related to one point in chemistry or physics. The question I was giving you later is on physics. And then all the three together, we can know which students are the strongest in logical thinking, because the correct answer will reflect on that. It's like kind of like what Julian mentioned in reading. The ACT is really focused on details. You have to pay attention to the different phrases or different the tiny difference between different experiments, because for every section we have a lot of different experiments on one thing, like for physics, but you have to be very detailed to spot the difference and try to conclude which one is flawed and which one is correctly or scientifically designed, perfect to get a perfect conclusion. So we can get on the next page to see. That is for grammar. I think I can explain this. This is for English section, but I can explain that instead on behalf of June. You can see the question 23. That is kind of like not for sentence structure or for the punctuation. Some students will call this question undefinable, because for all the four choices, every one of them is right if you put it back on the sentences. But we have a requirement is which one echoes a central point the writer makes about ghost sign. You have to read the paragraph a little bit. This is a story about a bar or a Jewish cafe, and they said there is a metal pole which was upright under a cape of kudzu vine, and the ghost sign is at the end of this paragraph, so you have to go through all the paragraph to get to the point. Maybe I think the parents or the students can spend like 10 seconds to get which answer is correct.
You're killing them, so for joining the class I still have to do homework.
So the correct answer is
the answer, please.
The correct answer is A, no change. So which was upright is the correct answer, because that is a description. You can check on the choice B, C, or D. was not what interested me or would have been good. It's not logical in this paragraph. And all the information are not mentioned in the following context. So
Yeah.
it's all about logic.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's like really frustrating because when, you know, students, you know, missed some certain questions, and then when they ask me, I just tell them like, oh, in line 20 or in line 12. And then they just immediately tell me, oh yeah, okay. So for ACT, it's all about like hide and seek, you know, you have to really find it. You find it, you get it. But then most of the time it's just like, you know, it's too rushed and you can't find it. Okay, that's
Yes,
one of the
because
things.
you have to go through the paragraph to find something to support your judgment. So you have to pay attention to the details in each
Yeah.
section of SAT. Yeah.
It's like detective. It's like detective. But for SAT, you don't need to. You just need to read the beginning, read the end. You get what is the general idea. You got it, right? You got it. Okay, so let's move forward to one more. Okay, this is one of the science.
Yeah, that's the science I mentioned. It's about physics. So you can see how much information you have to read before any one of the following questions. It's about 2 studies. They are all experiments on block spring. I think most of the students today are 9th grader or 10th grader. So you probably have already approached this point in physics.
I have
Yeah.
I have a question. So for example, if I'm really good in school physics, right? And then I saw this like picture and I saw this graph and I feel like, oh, you know, I just read it in some of the book, in a test book in my school. Can I directly jump to the question directly? I mean, without reading the question?
No, because you can check on the question. None of them is related to what you have read in your textbook. You don't have to calculate. You don't need to use any equations or the thing you have already learned in physics. You have to read the material very carefully and to find out what they are asking. That's why I'm talking about. They all point to the same direction, your logical thinking in science, not the thing you have already learned.
Here comes the question. One of the students say, I did a mock test and I did well except the science section. Do I need to learn biology, chemistry, and physics in the school to do well on the science section? Is there specific tips in preparing the science part for SAT? So for ACT, it's a 9th grade.
A 9th grade. Okay,
Yeah.
for this question, I will suggest, of course, you have to do, you have to learn the scientific thing like the biology, the chemistry, the physics in school pretty well, because it all trains your brain to be very scientific. But for the preparation for ACT science section, I think our 780U will give you a more profound preparation specialized for a full score because you will check on the questions. The results will not be based on what you have learned in school.
I see. Okay.
I
All right.
show them the question.
I think in overall, it's like you have to be good in the science in your school, and plus you have to prepare for your ACT. So it's like totally, it's 2 different things. It's connected, but it's 2 different things. So if you're not good in the science, I would say knowledge-wise, right? So you can't really figure out a lot of stuff. You have to really base on reading. Like me, I'm not good at the science, but I have to read everything. Okay. So, but if you have the background knowledge and pretty solid, and you can't really, you know, get ACT perfect score either, because you have to really prepare for the ACT test, and that's a different thing. So ACT test have a lot of tricky questions, and that's why even you study a lot of science and you may not get a full score. So we're talking about full score. We're not talking about a 20 or 20 something. Okay. So 9th grade, very good.
Talking of the full score in science section, I want to talk more about the mindset before that, because if you are good in school, you probably have some prejudgments on the science section, and you will jump to your own understanding of this part. So that be a little bit tricky for the students who want to get a full score on this section.
Yes, I agree. Okay, so let me show you. And so which one to choose for this one? Are you gonna give the answer, or you want to skip the next one?
Yeah, I want to skip to the questions. I want to show them what ACT science section is asking.
Okay.
For all the, I think there are 7 questions on this part, on this experiment. So you can see only question 28 is about something that you have to calculate. You have to use what you have learned in school. All the others, you have to find the answer in the reading material, the just before the questions. That's what I'm talking about. Don't take what you have learned in school so serious, because every answer is already in the information the ACT science section provides you. I can teach, like, I don't know, a person from elementary school to get a full score in science section.
Oh, elementary.
Yeah, even they know nothing about this part, but if you can have a thorough understanding of the information they have already provided you, I think you can answer all the questions correctly.
Okay, I just answered the student questions that you have to really study your science well. Now he may not study well because he think he can just correct. Okay, so you have to understand Louis in the right way. Okay, what she means is, you know, if you have chance to study, go ahead to make the solid foundation. Okay, if you don't have chance anymore, for example, you're already 11th grade, you have really limited time to prepare for ACT. She can also help you out to get the full score. Okay, use a very Xin Dongfang style. Okay, all right. So let's go to the next part. I also think you want to compare a little bit more for this question. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a question from the section of math. I just want to show the difference between SAT and ACT, because in SAT, in the math section, we don't have the trigonometric, but in ACT, we do have. So if you don't know what that is, you might have to study harder in math. But this one is comparatively a very easy one to solve. I don't know if any student have the answer for this.
Let's try. Type your answer in the chat box.
Amplitude of the function.
Do we get an answer already? Yes, we do.
You already get the answer. Okay, so the correct answer is.
One student asked, can you explain what is the process for you to correct this question?
For me?
Yes. I think they just don't want to do the question anymore. They want you to crack it and just tell them what is the tip, what is the general way to do it. Okay,
so the correct answer is B. First, you have to have a basic understanding of the function, the trigonometric function. So the value varies from -1 to 1. So the maximum value is 1, but you have a 1/2 before the function, so that's why the correct answer is B. It's very simple if you have learned that, but it based on which grade you are, but if you have learned that, it's quite simple for you to solve.
Yes, okay. All right, so we got a bunch of questions and I'm going to answer one of them, but let's see. I also need to, you're gonna add on, you're gonna make like some like additional explanation if you think you want it. Okay, all right, so here is one of the question about how the ACT scored. Okay, so I think we mentioned that like in the, I think it's right here, right? We mentioned a little bit more, but I will explain a little bit more for how the ACT score, how the ACT scored, okay? So so basically SAT score we mentioned a little bit before, and then, you know, like, you know, the raw score and how you do the cross score. And I think if you still understand, remember that part, and you can just try to think a little bit more, and that's kind of like similar for both SAT and ACT, okay? So, you know, so one of the things I don't recommend the students to do is like try to understand how the scoring system, you know, I don't do that. I don't want a student to do that. Why? Because you know, when they try to figure out what is the score system, things become tricky. For example, my students trying to do the AP test, and then they just leave half of the test like empty, and sometimes they don't even finish the whole test, because they told me they already know if you do more than 80%, you get a full score. So why I need to spend the time on the 20%? things like that, you know. And for ACT, SAT, because if you're shooting for the full score, and that means 0 mistake. So basically, SAT probably you still want to play a little bit of the rule, and you want to figure out what is the score system, and you want to think about which section is easier for you to get a full score. But for ACT, basically there's no room, okay, because you're shooting for high score, which is more than 35 or 36. That means, like what I said, 34, 34, you know, like 34, 336, or 235, 236. So when you talk about a 1 in the score, so that pretty much like you just cannot miss anything or miss only 1 mistake. So if you remember in that way, probably you're going to be more strict with yourself or with, you know, the preparation, the process, right? So the ACT has a 4 section, sometimes called like subject areas, right? So we already mentioned English, math, reading, science, and each subject is given a scaled score between 1 and 36, okay? So those area scores are averaged into your composite score, so which also range between 1 and 36. Okay, so where do those scaled score come from? The scale score from 1 to 36 are converted from your raw score on each of the subject area. So your raw score is simply the total number of the question you answered correctly in each section. So there is no point deduction from wrong answers on the ACT. So this is like pretty much you need to know first, okay? So understand the raw score, and then you're probably gonna think like, oh, you know, why, you know, I have to, just correct my own answer. So every time when you do the real test or do mock test in 7EDU, we offer actually, you know, scoring section. So it's like you finish and then you give the answer sheet to us. So we will score it in our system, and then we will figure out like how much you can get. So that can solve a lot of problem. And just to remember, don't be too nice to yourself. Okay, give your 0 space for any mistake. That's the only way you can get a more than 35. Hopefully I already answered your question. Okay, all right, so now we wanna, if you have a more question, you can just go ahead to ask. And if not, we wanna go ahead to talk a little more about our summer program, okay? So the summer program ACT all-in-one, like what I just mentioned, starting from the June, and we have 2 sections. So June section and a July section. And for ACT mock test, we have like the 12 days, 10 days, starting from July and August. So basically, all-in-one strategy. After that, you can join in the mock test directly, or you self-study by yourself, and that means you're already fully prepared, and then you join the mock test strategy in the end with us. So they're all shooting for this fall test. So hopefully, you know, you can get this down, and I just believe like you can if you really join and if you really fully prepare yourself. Okay. So the other thing that I want to remind everybody when you prepare for the ACT, so do not try to get to the full test like all the time, every single day. So like what we designed. So we put ACT all-in-one strategy, like what I said, we separate the question type. We separate the question type, and we separate the passage type. So we work on each question type, we work on each mistake style, right? Then we find the pattern of your mistakes. And after we find the pattern of your mistakes, and we will just work on the full test completely, okay? So what happened if you don't work on, you know, your mistake pattern, if you just run into the mock test? So usually it's like you always stuck in a certain, you know, like the score, and then you can't really improve. For example, students, usually they come to me, they say, oh, you know, I just start from 32 to 33. I just need your help for 1 or 2, okay? So for example, my students like use the 2 months with me, and then they just want to improve in 2 score. It may sound like really funny or ridiculous, like, oh, come on, 2 score, you just do two more practice, right? Basically you can't, because you stuck there. You stuck there. It's like SAT. You stuck at the 1,490, and just like a 10, the 10 score, you just cannot get it for some reason. So at that point, you really want to know what is your mistake pattern, and then you realize that, and then you dig into it to find out why you made a mistake, and then you'll be able to move to the next level. So that's the reason we put mock test strategy and review right behind the ACT all-in-one strategy, okay? So if you never start preparing any ACT, you can join the all-in-one strategy. It's a small group class, and We're going to be very strict with you, and for teacher working one with students, and we also have TA to support. You have you definitely have someone to put you out of your comfortable zone. Okay, and for mock test strategy, and after finish like all the different style, all the different passage type, all the different question type, and then we come to the complete real test, and then you will see like, oh, should I move a little bit fast? Should I just pay attention to this section, or should I review a little bit more for that section? That would make things easier. Okay. All right. So I have a question. For the mock test, is it web-based, or you send the exam to the student and the student monitor their own time? So we have a both. Okay. So some of the test is web-based, but most of tests, because there's a real test, so we send it to the student, and we also will do them together, or sometimes we will just monitor them together, because it's really hard for students to do it by their own. It's easier and also feel better when you see some other students doing like this. For example, I'm doing mock test together with Louis. So I can see Louis is working hard really on it, and I'm working hard on it. So I have peers to work together with. So that's why a lot of students, they just grab their friends together to join a mock test to compete, to see like who can get a better score this time, and who owns somebody's, make milk tea or like a movie tickets or whatever. Okay, so they play the competition like that. Okay. All right. So if you have more questions, and you can always visit us. And I do want to share a little bit more on our website. So you guys don't know how much we spend the time on working on this. Okay. So we have a lot of tips sharing there. I want to show you guys. It's a 7EDU online website. Let me show you. Okay. So on the website, actually, we share a lot of tips, and they're very, very helpful, I would say, resources. And if you have time, go through all of them. It's right here, blog. Okay. So we spend a lot of time to grab different kind of useful resources and interesting topics together. For example, we talk about what you need to know for the new application season. And we talk about, what AP to take for the engineering. And we talk about the ACT easy hacks to beat the test, the 11 strategies. And we talk about a common SAT idioms. We also talk about, the benefit of taking the AP and what type of AP. And I think the most interesting thing is that for last year, we start writing about how to write essay for different colleges. We start with UC Prep, we start with Common Prep. You can find a lot of resources here. And we spend a lot of time writing it, but unfortunately, a lot of students, they tell me they just don't know it exists there, right? So that's why I really want everybody to go check the website and find out useful tips for you. And I think if you really read into it, wow, somebody translated into Chinese. Okay, great. Okay, you can show your mom. Okay, so if you spend the time to dig into the sources, the blogs that we wrote, and I think you can gain a lot. Yeah, so we also mentioned some of the practice and the verb tenses, some test strategy and the college strategy. And I do believe those kind of experiences, and when we write them down, when we put them together, they're definitely going to help you out. Yeah. The top writing contest for high school students, I think this is like have 900 view. I think it's because they are so helpful, and they give you a lot of like different concept, and you can also think about what is the good enrichment program, right? Yeah, I think that's pretty much for today's open class, and hopefully we give you enough for you to enjoy, okay? So one more thing to remind, because the COVID-19, so this year the Common App, they start ask you questions related to the COVID-19, like what do you feel and how you think, how you're gonna react. And I do hope every student stay home to think about the COVID-19 situation, to think about the work situation, to think about even more about your life, your goal. And my students, some of them, they got passion for biology because of COVID-19. They feel like the human is so weak that there must be someone to save the world, right? And we also have students gave up the medical direction because they're scared of the COVID-19. They feel like, oh, a lot of doctor and nurse die, I don't want to be there. They change to be some other, direction. Try to figure out. I think life is never be easy, and but we're gonna be tougher, right? So I hope all these resources and informations and all the open classes can support you and help you to go through this, and we're gonna win for sure. Okay. All right. So stay safe, everyone. And if you have any question, please let us know. All right, so that's all for today's open class. Thank you, Louis, joining me. And
Thank you.
thank you all for joining today's open class. And we're gonna see you in next open class. Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye.